You guys ready?
Yep.
Okay, cool. Hey guys, welcome back to Two Perfect Podcasts. My name is Yzel.
My name is Renz.
And we're not perfect.
Two Perfect Podcast is dedicated to three things.
First, we are dedicated to sharing super personal stories and owning our imperfection.
Second, we want to create a safe space where we can be our most authentic selves.
And third, we want to build a community for people like us who are fed up with the pressure of trying to be perfect. And today's a special episode. I know I say that every time, but this time I mean it. This time it's real. Because today we actually have a special guest. We have Jackie.
Hi.
Woo!
I'm Renz's boyfriend.
I guess.
Long-time podcaster. First-time podcast guest.
So today's episode, we are talking about culture again, but of course this time we brought on a guest specifically to kind of get his perspective, because I think 2 episodes ago we were talking mostly about our experience being Filipino American, and we were talking about Asian American Heritage Month, and so we thought it would be a great idea to bring Jackie in here to give his perspective. So Jackie, I did write a long list of questions for you.
Okay.
Put him on the hot seat.
I'm ready.
And thank you so much for coming on and sharing your perspective. But I think it's important first to kind of give the audience like an understanding of a little bit about like your background, like your upbringing and how it pertains to like culture and stuff like that. So just like a little bit about yourself.
That's
That's the
Where to start?
that's a
where to
heavy
start?
question about myself. So I was actually born here in America, and at a very early age, about 6 or 7 months, I moved to China, where my grandparents took care of me. And so I came back when I was 4.5. To this completely foreign world that I was born in. And since then, it's been a journey into discovering what it means to be Asian American.
Do you have like memories in that period of time being in China? Because you were like months old till like 4 years old. My first memory, I was 3, so like I don't really remember much.
I have like faint memories of the place that I stayed at. I have like memories of going to like a zoo, being around like my grandma, my family. But for the most part, it's been so long. So I do have this false memory that I've told friends before of, for some reason, I remember being like kidnapped. But I don't know if that was a dream or something. I remember being carried. No, yeah. So I was never kidnapped.
I was gonna say you're about to change topics right now.
No.
Okay, false
But
memories.
as far as like memories go, yeah, I don't remember much about it. I was so young. So.
Yeah.
Wow. And do you remember what it was like coming to America then?
I remember eating my first hamburger. And I think that was...
Was it McDonald's?
It was McDonald's.
Of course.
Yeah. It was when they had their like Sunday special.
Yeah.
It was like 20 cents a hamburger. And I thought at first...
God, 20 cents.
Yeah, it was 20 cents.
Wow,
Yeah, it was 20 cents. Yeah. Throwback.
You sound old.
Yeah.
Remember when a burger was 20
cents? Back in the 1800s. Wow.
But as far as like the first few days being here, I was definitely in culture shock.
Mm-hmm.
I was ripped away from my support system that I've known for 4 years, and it was my first time seeing my dad. I've never seen him until that day, and so it was kind of a trip. Yeah.
Were you prepared at all in a way? Like, did like your mom or your grandma talk to you about what it was going to be like to see your dad, or like did they say anything to you at all, or was it just kind of like it just happened because you're a baby?
No,
they wouldn't consult.
Who's going to be like, okay, baby, this is what's happening?
There was nothing like that. It was just, oh yeah, you're going to come back to America with your family, and that was it. I mean, my parents weren't like really big talkers, so they're not one to sit you down and tell you like, hey, this is this is what's going on. Like this is your dad. It was just, oh hey, like you're back home where you belong. This is our life, and that was it.
Wait, you said you're back home. This is where you belong, and like this is your life.
Yeah.
It wasn't said, but that was like the way that it was done, or like how did you understand that as a child? You know what I mean?
I mean, I was 4, so I mean, I just went with the flow, I guess.
Yeah.
I didn't think
You
much
just came
about
to
it.
that conclusion.
Yeah,
on your
yeah.
own.
Well, I knew like
Mm-hmm.
up until that point, my parents were overseas. Because
Yeah.
we would talk on the phone. I would know like, oh, like that's my mom, and like I'll talk to my dad, like, oh, that's my dad. So I had to understand like where I was and where they were, and eventually I would, meet up with them.
Yeah. But
So-
do you actually have like an early memory of your mom? Because I know you said that that's the first time you saw your dad when you got here, and I know your mom also went with you to drop you off in China, right?
Yeah. No, she came to visit. After she dropped me off too, she
Mhm.
came to visit with my brother. But I don't really have much of a memory
Mm-hmm.
of
Mm-hmm.
being around her at that time.
Mm-hmm.
So I do have a list of questions. I'm kind of going to veer off a little bit for that because you're talking about that experience. I'm thinking about what it was like for me coming to America.
Yeah.
And I have an idea of like what Renz's experience was like coming to America.
Mhm.
And obviously being like that experience, that is what makes you like an immigrant, right? But like obviously in your experience, it's a little bit different because you were born here.
I know.
But you have that experience of an immigrant. But like,
Interesting.
but you wouldn't consider yourself an immigrant, right? Or would you?
I don't fully consider myself American, if that's an answer,
Okay.
because I've always felt a little different. Because
Okay.
I mean, coming here at 4 years old,
Mm-hmm.
I was behind in speaking English.
Okay.
Other kids were already speaking English, and I had to pretty much learn from the jump.
Okay.
And just like learning culture on the fly, that was, like learning the mannerism, mentality, and I was picked on a lot too by my brother for just being me, I guess.
Really? So so do you consider yourself an immigrant?
I mean, no,
Okay.
but I don't really feel like I'm 100% American.
Yeah.
Just because,
Wow.
yeah.
Because of that experience that you had.
Because
like
it's
he
so
can share the
he's
sentiment.
saying the story, and
Mhm.
I can see myself and my experience, and like I know I'm
It's
an
very
immigrant,
similar to my
right?
background.
Yeah, and it's like, wow, that's so interesting. You're kind of like just floating in the air. Like,
I know.
are you an immigrant? Are you not an immigrant?
Yeah.
I don't know. So then, my first question on my list is
Officially.
what does being Asian American mean to you?
That's
Another side.
I know.
that's a very loaded question.
Yeah.
That's something that I'm still figuring out, I think. And I think because Asian Americans have only been around like in the mass for like the last 30, 40 years. That's when like America opened up the policy on letting like immigrants in.
Mm-hmm.
And so I just feel like as a whole we're still figuring out what it means to be Asian American. I know that when I was a kid I went through like the whole ASEAN phase,
Mhm.
I had bangs, I wore baggy
What is the
clothes.
ASEAN phase for people who may not know what you're talking
It's
about?
like it was a phase where like Asian pride. That's what it was about. Like we had Asian rap. Like I don't know if you guys know about like the Got Rice song.
Of
or,
course.
like,
Of course.
yeah. So
Uh-huh.
it was kind
Hit
of
the
like
like
the
button if
Asian.
you know
It was
it.
kind of like the Asian gangster like vibe.
Yeah.
Like, the Asian gangster like culture.
Okay.
Like, everyone wore like white tees. Everyone wore like anchor blue jeans. I don't know if you guys remember that.
Yes. Yes.
People wore Cortezes, Air Force Ones. It was kind of like its own thing for a
It's
while.
like a brand.
Yeah.
It
Almost.
was, yeah.
Yeah.
And then it
It's
just kind of like faded away as we got older, But yeah, my early days, that's what I kind of gravitated towards too.
Okay.
And living in a predominantly, I lived in like Chinatown, so there were a lot. It was an Asian enclave, so there were a lot of Asians that lived around there.
Yeah.
But for middle school, I went to a predominant like Hispanic middle school.
Mm-hmm.
90% Hispanic. So
Mm-hmm.
I feel like culturally, I was kind of like mixed into like what they were into. Like
Yeah.
I was into like tying up my jeans.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
So
Oh my god, I remember that.
so I wouldn't say I had like a consistent Asian American experience. It was very. I had phases. You know, I had like early on I was into like Asian pride and all that, and then eventually, subconsciously, I was into like kind of like LA Hispanic culture.
Yeah.
You know, I wore a lot of like South Pole, like
Mhm.
Echo, a lot of Jordans, and yeah. I mean, it's hard to put it in words. Like thinking about my Asian experience or
Mhm.
Asian Americanness wasn't a thing when I was younger. It's something that I actually first thought about when I went into college and I took Asian American classes. So for the most part, I would say my culture throughout high school was like LA culture, whatever I was surrounded by. It wasn't like.
What did you get out of those classes, like in college? How did that affect the way you saw yourself and like your identity being Asian American?
I I really did enjoy those classes.
Yeah.
It was, I guess it was eye opening
Mm-hmm.
to kind of like see people put in words what I felt growing up and seeing it and seeing how my experience relate to other Asian Americans, like feeling like you don't belong in American society.
Mm-hmm.
Like we're like, on the margins of like American culture. Like we don't really like we never really had our thing. It's either you gravitated to like it could be like
What's the
white,
popular?
exactly like
Yeah.
like white culture or like hip hop culture.
Yeah.
That's how it kind of was.
Yeah.
But I mean, I guess it made me think more about just being Asian in American culture in general,
Mm-hmm.
and not because that's not something that I like consciously thought about and like tried to put in words. But when I took these classes and they talked about like the bamboo ceiling or like the model minority myth and all that, yeah, it was eye opening. Yeah, I mean,
Yeah. Friends, you took Asian American courses, right?
Actually, the only Asian American course I took was
Yeah.
a Filipino history class.
Okay. I've never taken an Asian American studies class, so I'm always fascinated with like what does it do for your sense of like self and what do you do with that information and like what like what's after that? Is there a sense of like metamorphosis you feel of like things make more sense or like what is it,
I think there is. Like, that's
Yeah.
definitely when I started to feel more integrated. I saw my people more in history books. Like, I got to learn, because like I was also removed from the Philippines in such an early age that I didn't really know a lot of like our background. I just kind of
history?
yeah. So I just kind of like lived it. So just knowing more about our people and just made me more prideful of who we are. It made me understand us.
Okay.
I would agree with that. Yeah.
Yeah. Because what were you gonna say?
I guess to like see like to see Asians in the history books and see how we impacted like the building of America up until this point was important to feel like we belong in some way, Whereas before it just never occurred to me. Like I've always felt kind of like an outsider, I guess.
Subconsciously?
Yeah.
I think because I like how you're talking about. I think we all relate because we all grew up in LA. Like it's the same for me. I went to a middle school with predominantly Latinos, so I felt like an other
Yeah.
You know, there's this sense of feeling like I'm the other in this situation. And even though no one's, I mean, maybe not. Maybe actually, there are instances where people tell you, they make comments to you,
Yeah.
they make jokes,
Of course.
and you start to feel like, you know, I'm different.
Mhm.
There's those moments where you feel different. I remember in 6th grade, I even told somebody, like, I lied to someone, and I was like, no, I was born here. Like, I'm American. Just because I felt so ashamed of being different
Yeah.
from, like, people that I was around. And that feeling of being, like, the other, it does something to you.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, Jackie and I have had this type of conversations before where when I got here, it was pretty obvious to people that I was an immigrant.
Mhm.
So it wasn't a fully conscious choices that I was doing, but I wanted to assimilate as much as possible.
Yes. Yeah. Because I think everybody wants to feel like they belong.
Yeah, I think it's a natural instinct to want to like be a part of a group.
Mhm.
You know?
Yeah.
So.
And if it means removing yourself from where you come from and trying to distance yourself as much as possible to what created who you are, like, you're gonna do
That's
it.
what's gonna take.
And that's so sad because I think about it and I'm like, I wish I was stronger. Like, I wish I was more proud. But
and I think that's the thing that you get from those classes when you get to college.
Yes.
You end up just retaking it back and
reclaiming
proud,
it.
Yes, and being proud of it. You
Yeah.
know, there's no shame anymore. You just want to be back to who you were.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have a question. Because I asked, you know, what does it mean to be Asian American to you? What does it mean to be Chinese American to you? Which I think is different.
Is there a difference to you?
I don't think there's much of a difference. Or if there is, I don't really think about. I'm not saying like every Asian American experience is the same. Like a Filipino American experience and like a Chinese American experience is obviously different. But I think we go through the same struggles. You know, like you said about feeling like like a foreigner, feeling like you don't belong. And I don't think that's any different than in that sense. Is no different between like the different types of like ethnicities, like you know, Chinese Americans, Filipino Americans. But as far as like, so you're asking if it's different?
I'm asking, what does it mean to you? What does it mean to be Chinese American?
I'm not too in tune with my Chinese culture.
Okay.
So that's something that I'm working on. I mean, like I eat Chinese food. I celebrate Chinese holidays, kind of.
You do. The big ones.
Yeah, the big ones.
Yeah.
I guess I have like certain like mannerisms or like mentalities that are I guess prevalent in Chinese culture.
Okay.
But that's about as far as it goes. That's a good question. I don't know what it means to be specifically Chinese American. What about you guys? Like, is there a difference? Like, are you able to put in words what it means to be a Filipino American?
I think we tried to put it into words the last time we talked about culture. How there was a difference. Like, it was harder for me to see myself as Asian American, and I always just saw myself as Filipino American. So for me, there's definitely a difference.
What does it mean to you, though?
What does it mean to me? We tried to cover that last time.
It's hard.
It's a difficult question, and I think we're just young, you know, and that's part of like our process and our journey through life is to like really define or build our identity, and I think it's worth asking ourselves and thinking, and I think that could be a question you can ask yourself and maybe never have an answer. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Because it's such a loaded question. I just wanted to know, like, if you had any ideas or if it meant anything to you. But I think for Filipino American, what does it mean to be Filipino American? I don't know. What does it mean? What does it mean to be Filipino American?
Good question, everybody.
Comment below.
Because we obviously are having a hard time
Yeah.
answering it. So if you guys can put it into words, please
Yeah.
let us know
I
so we
think
can
I think a
learn.
lot of it is because our perception of ourselves, obviously it's from within,
Yeah.
Mhm.
but a lot of it is built on like how society views us.
Yes.
And for the most part, we're lumped into like one category,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
Asian Americans. You know,
Mhm.
like I'm sure there's people that get mistaken for Chinese all the time, or like
Mhm.
vice versa and stuff. So, I think that's why it's hard to differentiate, like the different experiences
Mm.
because we're treated the same. But as far as like being specifically Filipino American or Chinese American, I think it's just the values that you hold from like Filipino culture or like Chinese culture.
Yeah.
You know, so I think personally, it's something that I not struggle, but like I work through a lot. Like like the values of like the East versus like the values of the West.
Mhm.
It's something that I guess I try to blend a lot. You know,
Can you give an example? Like in everyday life, or like in what do you mean?
Okay, so like in Chinese culture, I mean, I'm not saying they're not materialistic, but maybe it's just my family, but we're very like resourceful.
Okay.
So I have a hard time like buying new clothes or something, or just spending in general beyond like my basic needs.
Mhm.
And it's because it's kind of like how I grew up. Maybe it's because I grew up poor too.
Mm.
But I know in Chinese culture we're very resourceful. We like to save money and invest
Mm.
versus like living in the present and just spending and being like a consumer, which
it's a very Western thing to do.
yeah, because it's capitalistic, right? Like that's how our society is run.
Mhm.
So
How does that affect you? You said you kind of struggle with it.
yeah, because I struggle with like treating myself out. Like if I want to buy
like a new phone.
like a new phone, yeah, like it's like my phone is old. It's an iPhone 7. It's not that I can't afford it. I can afford it, obviously, but it works fine. It charges fine. Like I don't really do anything on my phone besides going on Reddit or like going on WhatsApp or something. So I don't see the need to have a new phone, even though it's been like 5 years.
Even though in like Western culture, it's like, oh yeah, definitely get a new phone.
Yeah,
you know?
And he's
people-
expressed it like multiple times too, where he'd say, "I should get a new phone." So it's not like something that you don't kind of want.
So then, why do you express that you should get a new phone if it's like, where does that feeling come from?
Well, that's a part of me like wanting to treat myself more just for the sake of treating myself out. Instead of being like very resourceful and like I guess like efficient with my money. Like I could use that money to invest for the future, as opposed to just having a new phone so that I could like say that I have a new phone and feel good about myself. Or
honestly, it's an admirable thing that your iPhone at that is still going after all this time as an iPhone 7, because like those things, they slow down. Like everybody complains about it slowing down or like breaking.
And I think that's the sentiment, like why he kind of wants it, because it is kind of annoying sometimes for him.
Oh, it is breaking down.
You know what? It was breaking down for a while, but for some reason
we solved the problem.
No, yeah, for some reason.
Yeah, like for a while, like it stopped charging, because I haven't heard you say that actually in a while. Like I haven't heard you say I should get a new phone.
So the charging port was fucked up, and then for some reason it's fine now. So I have even less of a need to replace my phone.
Yeah,
but honestly, forget it. If I didn't like crack my screen on my last phone, I probably would still have a Samsung 8. Like, who cares?
Same.
Yeah, like,
Yeah.
But my next question, what do you think about the current climate in regards to how Asian Americans are perceived?
I don't want to get you guys canceled. I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding.
It's okay.
I don't care. Get us canceled.
Be your most authentic self.
Obviously, it's scary, for Asian Americans, specifically like the older generation, like hearing about grandmas getting stabbed at the bus stop in San Francisco. Like that could be my mom, but I mean, what can we do aside from like learn how to like take precaution and defend ourselves? Because it's human nature for people to want to blame, put the blame on anything, on a certain group of people for what happened, and obviously COVID is a big catalyst to why these sentiments are like so out in the open, people just blatantly attacking Asian people, so that's it's unfortunate, it's difficult to even talk about, but yeah, I don't know, it's shitty. I mean, what can I say? We can't obviously fight like violence with violence. Like that's just not an answer. So, yeah. What about you guys? What do you think?
I think we also touched upon that on our last culture episode where it angers me, and it also scares me to the point where I have also stopped doing some of the things I usually do on the daily, and I also don't have like any clear answer to that, I guess. So, but I definitely agree with you. I think that's a very common. I'm just gonna say I agree with you. That's like I don't always believe of fighting violence with violence, but I wonder if that's strictly an Asian sentiment. Like it's that's how we feel like as a group.
I don't know.
Because it's like like we're mad. We say we're mad. What do we do with that frustration? We sometimes I feel like we're not doing enough. We're not doing anything.
We're doing this.
We are doing this.
Yeah.
We are doing this. I guess like usually when people say they get mad, it's usually occupied with anger, and with anger there's violence, and that happens around us all the time.
Yeah.
So
I think that informing the public could only do so much. Like you have famous people like coming out, like Damian Lillard, Steph Curry, saying like stop Asian hate, but it's still happening. So
yeah.
I think the best that we could do is learn how to like defend ourselves. Just be more protective of like the community, which I'm sure people are. Like that. People are walking, the elderly to like
I've
to
seen
stores
stuff.
and like the bus stops.
Yeah.
So it's just a hard question. How do you stop it, right? When you have people saying like, "Oh, it came from China," like the Asians are the ones who like it came from like a Chinese lab, like like obviously that's gonna inflame people to feel a certain way towards a certain group.
Yeah.
And especially if they see all Asians as just like one group, and it's just yeah. So it's hard.
How would you compare it to the way Asian Americans were perceived in the past?
Perceived? I mean, I personally have not had a lot of like outright racist moments or like experiences. Like maybe in middle school, but kids are kids, so I'm sure I've said some like pretty messed up things back. But just based on like what I read and like what I hear from people and their own experiences, I feel like there's always been kind of an underlying like anti-Asian sentiment
Mm-hmm.
in society. You
Mm-hmm.
know, because it's always like a East versus West thing, right? Like it's always you always hear about what China's doing and you know
Mm-hmm.
fucked up shit that they're doing, and that kind of like inflames attitudes towards like Asian people. You know, you see it on YouTube comments all the time. You see it on Reddit comments all the time.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not something that just came out of nowhere. If that's what you're asking about, I think it's something that bubbled to the surface given our situation. And yeah, I mean, I don't know why. Maybe it's I guess I don't know why. I just feel like there's always been some type of anti-Asian sentiment in American society, um, to a certain degree. Yeah.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I mean, there's tons of like historical backing, that have been documented of specifically anti-Asian sentiment. How does the anti-Asian sentiment in like the media and whatnot, or even if it's like reported on the news, how does that make you feel?
How does it make me feel?
And that's like obviously for both of you guys.
I mean, obviously, I would like to see much more representation in the media. You know, like it makes me angry, of course. You know, yeah, it's not. I guess it's not something I really think about and put into words. Like I hear stuff that Jeremy Lin says about what he had to go through as like an NBA player. You know, like that's upsetting. You know, being like overlooked based on your ethnicity. That doesn't feel good, right? Like no one would want to be looked over or like brushed aside based on just like your ethnicity, like where you're born into. So, yeah, I mean, I don't know what else to say really. It's angry. I mean, I think we've made a lot of strides. Over the years, you see a lot more Asian representation in movies and like music. So it's progress, you know. Could be better. Like we're not completely there yet, but I think it's like we're going somewhere.
It's kind of like we're inching there. It's really interesting with everything that you're saying. Was like there's been that anti-Asian sentiment in the past, and then it's just kind of like buried. And then with COVID, that really aggravated kind of like the sleeping giant, right? Like people are already kind of secretly feeling these feelings, and then now because of COVID, they can lash out and act violently because of the hatred that they've been harboring all this time, and it's kind of like it's scary. And
yeah. I mean, you know, people like to think that racism, like before all this happened, and you know, like when Obama was around, like I don't think racism ever left. You know, it was just buried. You know, you could censor people. You can make it not okay for people to say like racial slurs, but like.
But the sentiment is still there.
It only goes so far. Yeah, it's like a generational thing. So I'm not surprised by it.
Yeah.
I'm not surprised by it. You know. So even in my own like family, like my mom growing up was pretty problematic when it comes to things about like talking about race. You know. So I mean, so I'm not surprised. Like it's that
still, it exists in other places with other people. Yeah, it's just that your mom's not going to act violently.
You know, she's not.
Against people.
Yeah, she'll just make like remarks here and there. You know.
Yeah.
So.
What about you? How does it make you feel?
Very similar. I think especially with like the rise of like social media and stuff like that, it's so easy to see it all the time. So which I'm also kind of glad that people are getting angry, because I feel like that's when real change, like, you know, that's when people start to demand real change for. So I guess what I want to feel is hopeful for the future. Hopefully, like the next generation can find a way to make it better. And I think I think conversations like this definitely helps because it helps. As Jackie said, he's never tried to vocalize it before. It's just things that he's felt. So hopefully, with messagings like this, it helps people understand themselves and us. If you're looking at it from a different perspective, and hopefully it humanizes us to the point where we're not a threat and there's no point in violence.
How do you guys think you would have felt about everything going on if you were a child? Like yourself as like a 10-year-old or an 11-year-old. Like how do you think all of the anti-Asian sentiment and the violence and the attacks, like how do you think that would have affected you if you were a child today?
I would probably be terrified. I mean, or feel helpless, both basically. I mean, you're only a child, and to see like your mom or like your grandma being attacked on the streets. I mean, I don't think it's any different than I would feel now, So maybe I would feel more helpless. I feel helpless now. I mean, like I can't watch my mom 24/7. She's working, so I can't. I don't know. Like I can't like make sure she's safe. So.
It's hard to say because I feel like when I was younger, my perception of danger was skewed. So I probably feel the same way where I just feel helpless and because I kind of also grew up that way. There wasn't a lot of it in social media or like on television and stuff, but my mom was always like scared for me. She was always like, oh, just be like, don't go outside, be careful of what you say, because it could just be dangerous for you. That's just always how she felt. So it was always like this for me, and it's just worse now because there's actual reasons to be scared.
And you see it all the time.
Yeah.
You're on social media, you see it on Instagram or like Facebook or wherever. So like I just can't imagine like if I was a kid growing up through this time and seeing everything that's happening, it would be kind of crazy. But also I think it would make me tougher. I think it would also be one of those things where I would feel like angry that I would be like, I need to do something. Like I can't be complacent. I can't be just sitting scared because like that's not actually going to do anything.
Yeah.
And I saw actually a post. Did you guys hear of this like I think they're in high school or maybe even younger. They're an all-girl band called the Linda Lindas, I think.
Yeah.
Did you hear about them?
I saw the headlines, but I didn't click on like what that was about.
Did you click on it? Did you see it?
No, I've just heard of it.
You heard about like the situation and like how they wrote a song and everything about the boy. Like, did you hear about that?
No.
No, just headline. Okay.
Yeah.
So basically, this boy, prior to the lockdown happening, he came up to this girl and he said, oh, like my dad told me to stay away from Chinese people. And she's like, I'm Chinese. And he's like, oh, ew. And then like backed away. And obviously like that's fucked up. But her response was like turning it into music. And her band like made this song, I think is like, did they say fuck you? Like, or like you stupid sexist racist boy is the title of the song. And they actually got to play it at the Los Angeles Public Library. They're on like YouTube, and so they had an opportunity to showcase their song.
Cool.
Yeah, and like I was thinking about that, like damn, like imagine being a kid. Like I'm, an adult now and I feel scared, but it's like as a child
you're fearless.
Or I don't know, I was gonna say you're like you don't have,
that's why I said my sense of danger was really skewed when I was young, So, and I do love seeing that because I I see it a lot on IG where a lot of young kids are really the ones fighting the fight.
What do you mean?
They're just very vocal about messed up shit. Like if anything ever happens, like they're the ones usually calling out for change. I mean, usually I see it on like repost, and a lot of people like to make fun of people. It's just like being a social media justice warrior. But I can sense like the real anger with a lot of them. So I think it's still authentic, and I think there's still like a place for that in the movement. So it gives me hope.
Like, you don't think it's just like virtue signaling?
I mean, I'm pretty sure some of them are, but sometimes it does feel genuine because, like, that people are sharing information, and I think that's important too. So even though it is maybe, but sometimes it just feels right because, like, they're the ones, they're angry, and this is their platform, especially now in this current climate where they can't really go out there. I think there's also a space for it.
I think that even if it's virtue signaling, it still gets the message across. So I don't see any harm in that. I mean, it is messed up if some people are trying to monetize a movement.
I think that's where
it's messed up. But I mean, any exposure is good exposure, in my opinion. But yeah, I think that's one good thing about social media, aside from all the memes that it generates.
What? That's the best part.
That's how I get my news.
All the trash that it generates.
That's how I stay informed.
It's great because that's not something that we had growing up. When I was 13 years old, I was like shooting the shit on AIM and like playing like Gunbound or something, or
hell
yeah,
playing
just
like
throwing
games.
ASL everywhere, right?
yeah. So that gives me hope that the younger generation cares about the things that's happening in the world, because I didn't know jack shit about politics when I was a kid. I didn't know anything that was going on really. I was just in my own bubble, So it's a good sign, That's one good thing that came out of the internet, So
for sure. Yeah, I know. I saw that girl and I was just like, that's awesome, because now all of these Asian girls that have potentially gone through a similar situation, they're going to feel a sense of like empowerment, seeing how she's reacting to it instead of cowering and being like
just carrying it on and feeling like shame for who she is.
Yeah, or pretending to just like shrug it off, but deep down it's like something that's probably going to follow her, So I think that's really cool. But yeah, how do you establish a sense of pride in your culture?
Go first.
Go first.
Yeah, go first.
You go first.
Me? It's my question. Oh, Yzel, I have a question for you. Yes, Yzel?
Yeah, those are your favorite conversations.
No. Yeah, no, it's not.
I think for me, it's just living authentically myself, trying to learn more about my culture, trying to pass, because like we were talking about food. That's one of the first ways for me to be in touch within my culture. So to me, it's just like I love feeding people, and especially if they never had like Filipino food before, and then they always ask me, it's like, oh, where's the best spot to go get Filipino food? And I'm like, honestly, I don't say my house, although it's true. No,
preach.
I'm just saying, like, I just don't really have like a favorite like Filipino spot. I mean, there are good Filipino restaurants, don't get me wrong, but I love home cooked Filipino food. Like, to me, that's where the love is, and there's just something about that just makes it taste so good. So usually that's what I say. Go find someone who can make you home cooked Filipino food, because I think that's the best
that you're ever gonna have. Yeah.
And then if I love them and be like, eat my food.
Yeah.
Here you go.
Just come over.
Food is definitely a good way to, I guess, get more in touch with your culture. Because definitely when I was growing up, I ate Chinese food a lot, but I didn't really love it. Like I would rather eat like Mexican food or like American food and stuff like that. But now that I'm older, I find myself searching for like those comfort foods that I had when I was a kid. And I think that's helped me feel more pride in my culture.
When did you start having those experiences? When did it like
probably after college.
Oh wow.
Yeah. I know we started eating out at Asian places a lot more. And I just feel like I'm proud to be American, right? And I think it's hard to. I don't know what it means to be proud of Chinese culture without sounding like anti-American.
Interesting.
Like, cause like, what does it mean to be proud of your Chinese culture? Like, I'm proud of like who I am, the values that are instilled in me. So I guess in a way, I am proud of like Chinese culture because that's a part of me. That's like a part of my values. And obviously, I have like American values that I've instilled in myself too. But yeah, it's hard to, I guess, define like what.
So would you say you are prideful in your Chinese culture, or that you're not sure if you are, or don't know how to be, or just?
I would say I don't know how to be. Obviously, there are things that like China itself. Like I'm not like things that they've done. The whole like imprisonment of like the Muslims there. Like that's I'm not proud of that. So there's. It's a hard question. Like, what does it mean to be proud of Chinese culture?
There are also on the same end where historically, there are pretty horrendous, atrocious things America has done.
Yeah.
Oh, for sure.
And yet you feel the American pride.
I do. So okay, if I'm talking about like if I'm thinking about like just. Yeah, it's hard to talk about.
That's interesting,
it's hard
right?
to talk about. Yeah.
Because
okay, Chinese people are very hardworking, and we've always been like dating back to like the railroad. Like the railroad days.
Yeah.
And I guess I have a sense of pride in that, because I like to think that I'm hardworking, kind of. Not really.
You are. You're hardworking.
My parents are hardworking, and I take a lot of pride in that. For them to like come to this foreign country and establish themselves. With no money in their pockets, and to just establish a life in a foreign country. That's not an easy feat to accomplish, So I'm proud in that. But as far as like current Chinese culture, like what's happening in China and all that, I don't know much about what's going on in China. So I can only speak for like what it means to be like a Chinese American.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so in that sense, I'm proud to be Chinese American. Like we work hard. We
Interesting.
We persevere. After everything that's been done to us in America, with like the lynchings and the Asian Exclusion Act, the Chinese Exclusion Act, and stuff like that. So that's. I'm proud in that sense, but I guess as far as like China is involved, like I don't really have a lot of ties to China.
Yeah.
Aside from like the 4 years that I lived there.
Yeah.
So it's hard for me to speak on that.
Yeah. For sure.
It's not like
same.
I'm not consumed by Chinese politics. I don't know what's going on there. So.
But there's more to. Like culture is just more to just the politics that's going on right now.
Right.
So it's like you could still feel connected to it even without agreeing to the policies. And I think that's why she brought that up about like what the American or being an American was like the atrocious things that they've done throughout the years.
But I still feel American pride.
Exactly.
For sure.
Yeah.
So
It's interesting.
how
Maybe
do
it's
you-
still like that part of yourself who still like wants to assimilate, as you said, because it's easier to say that you're Asian American, Chinese American, but maybe that's where you're holding off. But I don't know.
I mean,
I'm just guessing.
the only Chinese culture that I know is what my parents imparted to me. So
Mhm.
I'm proud of that. You know, the
Yeah.
values that they impart in me to be like hardworking, to like, you know, strive for like the best you could be. You know, stuff like that. And that coincides with American values too. You know,
Yeah.
so it's
I agree.
I guess what I know as far as Chinese culture goes, I'm proud of.
Yeah.
So
Because I would definitely agree with you because, like,
Mhm.
you know, the stuff that's going on in the Philippines with, like, the current political climate and stuff like that, that's not something I'm, like, particularly proud of, but I don't know a lot about it at the same time, so it's interesting what you... I don't know where I was going with that for a second.
I'm not embarrassed or ashamed to be Chinese.
Yeah.
I think that's a better way. Like, I guess before I wasn't per se like embarrassed, but
Mhm.
obviously I wanted to fit in. You know, like I didn't really think much about my Chinese culture, what it meant.
Mhm.
You know, I just wanted to be an American.
Mhm.
That's not how I feel now. Like I'm not ashamed to be a Chinese American.
Yeah.
Mhm.
You know, I think, yeah, that's as much as I can say about like my pride when it comes to being like Chinese or Chinese American.
Yeah.
Like I'm no longer like hiding it. It's not like I'm
Yeah.
like running away from it. You know.
Mhm.
Same. When did you guys start to feel that American part of Asian American?
What do you mean?
Because when I got here, as an immigrant, I
Mhm.
never felt like that was me. I just thought of
The
myself as
American
Filipino.
part.
Yeah, the American part, because I was just like, I wasn't born here. I'm not American. I remember struggling with that identity, and I don't think it was until high school, like end of high school, that I realized I am Asian American. That specifically the American part, because I only saw myself as Asian or
Specifically Filipino.
Yes.
You know what? I I didn't really feel it until end of high school as well. Like that is when, and I guess that's really when you're going through that who am I type, like who am I, you know, time in your life, because you're going off to college and you're like selecting your major, and when you're doing that you're thinking about like, oh, like what am I going to do in the future, and just like all these different things. So I would say around high school I started to think about like, yeah, like I am American, and that's also when I started to like travel more as well, and then traveling out of the country. That
Really
shit makes
reaffirm.
you feel American as hell.
Yeah. That's how I felt when I went to China for work for a week.
Yeah.
Like I felt so foreign, like because I like my Chinese is crappy. I can't speak Mandarin. I could barely speak Cantonese, and so just
You speak no Mandarin.
I know like certain words, but that's it.
Okay,
It's not conversational.
Yeah.
And so trying to communicate with like my coworkers in China, like the people that I have to work with, and like seeing their faces and like feeling that struggle of like communication, and like kind of like feeling a sense of disappointment, because obviously I'm Chinese. Like you look at me, I'm Chinese, but I can't speak a lick of. I can't communicate with them at all. So I felt really American in that sense. But as far as like when did I realize, or when did I start feeling like I was American?
Yeah.
I don't know. That's a good question. I just know that. What does it mean to be an American? You know, I celebrate American holidays. I consume American media. I wear like American brands. Like I dress like an American. Like
American values.
Yeah.
American values. Like
Yeah.
It's hard to pinpoint. I didn't always feel American, obviously.
Yeah.
But it was hard for me to pinpoint when I truly felt like an American.
You know, it's crazy. Some people don't have that experience ever.
Exactly. Which I think that's why I asked, because again, he had that unique experience where he had that where he was in China when he was really young, so he kind of had the immigrant experience, and that's why I asked, because I feel like that's usually an immigrant experience where you come here and you get that identity confusion.
I was about to ask.
Yeah.
Okay. Continue what you were saying.
Yeah, I think it was just that where it's very confusing, because I was just like, okay, I know I'm not from here, so I'm not American.
Mm-hmm.
But eventually, as the older I got, I started to get those American values, and I realized, I'm like, wait.
I'm American as
well.
Yeah.
And I just started taking ownership of that.
I think you realize that it's from within and not from external I guess factors. You know, because
it's more than just where you're born.
And going back to what we were saying, it's hard to, like, immigrant or not. Like, I'm sure people who've been born here and grew up here also feel the sense of like, or they question how American they feel, because like we talked about, just as a group, Asian Americans we're viewed as
still an other,
like the perpetual foreigners, which is what I learned in like Asian American class.
Yeah, it doesn't matter if you've been here for like 5 generations.
So there's a lot of factors, that goes into it. Like it muddles like your feelings of how
other you feel.
Or how that, and like how much you belong in the society.
Because I was gonna say, like, you know, our coming to terms with those feelings of like being American and what that means to us. Imagine like if you guys had kids, like your great grandkids. Yeah. Are they gonna be having that experience of having to come to terms with their American self? Or is that even gonna be like a question? Or like what is that even gonna be like? You know what I mean? Like, how interesting is that?
Yeah.
Probably not. They probably feel like they should belong here, but I could still see others making them feel different.
Right. Because I've met like 3rd, 4th generation Chinese people before.
And
well, I mean, obviously we didn't talk about like stuff like this.
Okay.
But like,
no.
I mean, like, I can imagine it's hard to not feel some type of way when you see Asian people being attacked on the street. Whether you're 1st generation or 3rd generation, 4th generation, that shit don't matter when you're on the street. You know, like they'll see you. You look Asian. You're just as likely to be a victim as anyone else. So I could be wrong, but I'm saying like I could imagine it's no different than how we feel, right?
Interesting. How troublesome. Like, that's horrible, because it's like, you know what I mean? I feel like for me, okay, it makes sense that I can have these feelings because I wasn't born here.
Yeah.
But if I have kids and like they have kids and kids and kids and kids, and it's like they're born and raised here and they still have that struggle of, do I even belong, or like, am I American, or am I American enough, or like whatever? It's like, is that fair?
No.
That's why there's that term perpetual foreigner, you know. So it's not fair, but you know, people, I guess it's hard for people to overcome their biases and like in their minds, like what an American looks like, because obviously we're always going to look different than like you know, like what, like when you picture an American, you picture like white people, right? So and we're never going to look like white people, so I think that's where it comes from. Like it's
you know, I was thinking like in the hypothetical, because I was talking about like, what if you have kids and kids and kids and kids, and I think about my time in elementary school. There was this girl, and she was a big snitch, and like any problem that would happen to her, guaranteed she was going to tell her mom. And like we all look down on her, and we all, because snitches get stitches. This is
Yeah,
LA.
yeah.
Like, you know what I mean?
That was the culture.
That's not like
unfortunately.
you don't
Yeah.
snitch.
Yeah.
But she was a big snitch, and she would always tell her mom. She would tell the teacher like right away, and everybody hated her for that. Like we looked at her as like annoying.
Yeah.
But I think about it now as an adult, it's like that's actually the right way to do it. Like if I had a kid and someone said a racial slur, it's like of course my thinking is like I have to protect my child. I have to teach my child to protect themselves, but I feel it's also my part to teach that child and be like, "Hey, like you have to understand like why this is wrong, and maybe your parents are not, having these types of conversations."
Yeah.
But like the mom would come through to the school and talk to the child. You know what I mean? And she would have like a conversation. And that to me is like, that's probably a pretty good way to go about things instead of being like, okay, like whatever, just
dismiss it.
I think I'm on the fence about that because I feel a lot of times if your mom or your dad's handling the situation for you, it could make it worse.
Absolutely.
Right? Like,
yeah. It depends on what it is. But I mean, in the sense of like a racial slur, specifically, are you kidding? Like,
I think
kids don't know how to handle that.
I think that falls on the actual school.
Ooh. Okay.
Like it's not the duty of like let's say that girl's mom to teach another kid about racial sensitivity. Like it falls on the school. Like you should be proactive about it. You should bring awareness to it when shit like that happens. That's just how I feel. I think it's on the school to like, I guess,
have diversity training or something.
Not diversity training, but like.
But it's their purpose
it's
to
on,
educate.
It's on them to let the kids know what's okay and what's not okay, because school is kind of like a mini simulation of what it means to be in the real world, So, that's just how I feel. I mean,
interesting. I don't know. I think that's a tricky one because everybody has a different idea of what the purpose of school should be.
Yeah.
And I think the conflicting or like just the different ideas is what makes, I don't know, the schools here are just weak, like, think of your education going through like elementary school, middle school, high school, like, did they really teach you what's right or wrong? Like, my parents, they're the ones that taught me what was right or wrong. Like, my siblings, they were the ones who taught me right or wrong. Like, my teachers didn't teach me any of that stuff. Like, nobody was like that with me,
My 5th grade teacher kind of did.
How did they educate you on that? Like a list of
I just remember, not necessarily. I think it's more so like when they catch a behavior that's problematic, they try to so when I was in the Philippines, sticking your tongue at someone was very common. It was like a way to tease someone, and then when I got here, I did that to someone, and my teacher like pulled me aside and taught me. He was just like, "That's really rude. Like, you don't do that to another person." So again, I guess it's like person to person, teacher to teacher.
Yeah, absolutely, it is. Yeah,
but that's like the only like that's one of the instances that I remembered where like a teacher had to tell me like that's not right. You can't do that. But I agree with you. Usually, it does fall.
Teachers have the burden of so many things already to do, test scores, like curriculum changes, and it's like then it's like, oh, I gotta teach your kids like the manners and everything with all the other expectations. It's just, I don't know. Like, I don't know how. I just don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know anything.
It's definitely complicated, but yeah, I mean,
I think the only appeal of bringing a third person in to to point out the behaviors is that usually I feel like when it's a parent, it's very personal. So usually I feel like maybe it might not be even be helpful because they're so focused on the anger that like the other person or the kid's parent will think of it as like, oh, you're just attacking my kid instead of trying to educate that kid. Because I know that's a lot of sentiment. It's just like, who are you to teach my kids? You know.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's what I'm saying. I think like that girl's parent, mom, should take it up to the principal.
Mm-hmm.
And
she did. She did all of it. She did all of it, and she talked to the kid. She did every single thing she could possibly do to address the situation. She was just very involved.
Okay, then I think she did the right thing, but
Yeah.
I just don't agree. Like, she should be the one parenting the other person's kid. That should come from the other kid's parent.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like the principal should be
talking to the parent.
Yeah, should be bringing them in. You know, as a
mediator.
Yeah, exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. So, yeah, I mean,
I agree with.
Yeah.
That I agree with, but I think for me, my upbringing, my thinking was I'm not telling my parents.
Yeah.
I'm gonna handle it on my own.
Yeah.
Because I'm not gonna be the loser to bring my parents into this situation and look like a snitch.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And I don't think that that's right.
I think that's a good approach too, though. Like to teach
build
your
that
kids
mindset
to defend yourselves.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
yes.
Yeah.
Is there a way where it can both exist though? Where you don't look like such a dweeb, where you have to rely on your parents all the time, and to also have like a backbone?
Yeah, I think if that has to do with like standing up for yourself, so it's like you could tell your parents, but if you also took the action to yourself, like if you're the one who also just went to the principal, like it doesn't look like your parents did the battle for you.
But it's still dweeby. You're going to the principal. So
True. I know, right?
Honestly, that's just like a very LA sentiment. As you said,
Yes.
it's just
It's very
stitches.
LA, yeah.
Snitches get stitches. And I was like, unfortunately, that's what it was. But we also got to change that mindset. We got to like call it out. Like,
but imagine, but respect is not given. So that's why, maybe because I grew up in LA and I grew up in like a rough.
Yeah.
I mean, Chinatown wasn't rough, but like my middle school was a rough middle school. And if you want to get picked on even more, then you would go to the principal. But if you wanted to settle things on your own, you would have to suck it up and like handle it on your own. Like whether that means like talking smack back or like getting into a fight. You know, that's how respect was earned in middle school. I mean, I didn't get into a lot of fights in middle school, but
that's how it was.
That's how it was.
Yeah. Same. That was my experience too. So it's like, just imagine your child.
Yeah.
Like what that experience would be like. Personally, I'm anti-violence now, so I would not want my child to just start up a fight with someone. But I do understand that feeling of like, no, you need to know how to fight. Like, you need to know how to defend yourself.
Yeah, because if you don't learn when you're a kid, when are you ever gonna learn?
You're just gonna be a punk for the rest of your life?
Yeah, especially like...
No.
Like, growing up...
Not in my house.
Just kidding.
Yeah, so like growing up, like, Asian kids were like the nerdy kids. Like, they were the ones, like, they were quiet, like, they didn't speak up for themselves, and... Is that...
Cheddar is meowing. He wants to get in the room.
And like having an older brother, like he taught me to like stand up for myself.
Yeah.
And to act tough, like look tough.
Yeah.
You know, since he went to the same middle school that I did, it was a rough middle school. So, I think that worked well for me.
Yeah.
You know, I didn't get picked on a lot. So,
would you say that it got better after, like, you know, as the years progressed?
What do you mean got better?
Just like the tensions between people, because I feel like that's a very common thing I hear from others, where it's like the younger grades are usually getting in less fights.
Like softer. They're softer.
Yeah.
Not in my school. It was worse.
It was worse?
It was worse, yeah. Like, once our class graduated, the classes after us there were more gang members, and
Oh,
there
really?
were more like there was more violence in school, and a lot of them were like getting expelled, and
Yeah.
even like pregnancies and stuff were happening more often.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it got better in my middle school, so I guess it depends on.
Yeah.
Like,
your middle school is pretty bad, so it's like how much worse could it get?
So everything was like an up from there.
Yeah.
You gotta go up eventually. Yeah. I don't know.
You said you had one more question?
I do have one more question, and it's gonna take kind of a drastic turn. And it kind of coincides. Obviously, a lot of the questions are like related to one another. What do you enjoy about being, for you, Chinese American, and for you, Filipino American? What do you enjoy about it?
Have to really think about that one. Not that I don't enjoy being Chinese.
It's just putting it to work.
There's just so much on the list.
No. I can go first.
Yeah.
I guess, like, as I got older, I really enjoy the way we see family.
Yep.
And the way we always have to kind of like get together, have to celebrate, and just I really just started to appreciate that part of being Filipino American, because I feel like when I was younger, I was just like very angsty, so I was just like, leave me alone.
Oh my god.
I know. So
you mean yesterday? I'm just kidding. Yeah.
So I think now that I'm a little older, and I just really appreciate like just getting back in that and just having more family time.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. That's one of the best things about being Filipino American.
Mm-hmm.
What do I enjoy about being Filipino American?
Yeah.
I enjoy our almost like natural sense of adventure. Because just in my family, everyone's like left the Philippines and like has ventured out into living in different countries, and that's very common in the Philippines. I remember reading like a statistic that majority of the economy in the Philippines comes from outside of the Philippines, because typically we will leave the country and then send money back home. To help the family that is still in the Philippines. Yeah. And so there's that sense of, and actually
that's also very common in Chinese culture.
Is it?
It is, yeah, surprisingly.
Yeah, to send money back home?
Yeah, my mom used to send money all the time back to like her family. And pretty much like carried her side of the family.
Yeah.
I think what it is about though with China is you guys have like export. So it's like you guys have other things to stimulate the economy, whereas like the Philippines, I think they really heavily relied on the
we are the export.
Exactly.
Like people, our skills and like what we're doing out and like the jobs we're performing out in different countries, like we're the export.
Yeah.
We're the product.
Yes, we are the product. Hospitality.
Yeah.
And that's why family is such a big deal, because it's like it's what really
everything
keeps it going.
Yeah.
Anything?
What do you enjoy about being Chinese American?
I think I really enjoy the way we look out after each other. We're not outwardly expressive.
Okay.
Which is not in our nature. I don't go around saying I love you to like my mom. Like I say it to my brother sometimes. But like I know for a fact if I need something, they'll be there.
Yeah.
And we express our love in actions and not so much in words.
Yes.
And I've come to really appreciate that. I mean, it goes the same with my friends too. Like my, like if I need something, I know they'll be there. Like if I, like Steven, for example, or just any of my friends, if I need to borrow money, I'm sure they wouldn't even hesitate to let me borrow money.
Yeah.
So and it's not like we're not super expressive, like unless we're like drunk or something. Like
yeah.
We won't say I love you all the time, or like we won't tell each other how much we appreciate each other, but like we definitely, like I feel it, and I'm sure like they feel it too. I hope so. I mean,
Do you think that is specific to, or you feel that is something Chinese Americans, that's just like how Chinese Americans are?
Well, I can't speak for every Chinese American, but at least like that's how I am. That's how my brother is. That's how my friends are. You know. Yeah, yeah. I mean, I just know in Chinese culture in general, we don't say thank you a lot, and that could seem kind of rude, but in a way, it's because it's already implied. I don't know if that makes sense.
It makes sense to me.
Like I don't really say thank. Like my mom doesn't say thank you a lot. I don't say thank you a lot, but like.
Much obliged.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's hard to I guess put in words, but yeah. I guess when I was younger, I had a problem with like or when I used to like not have a problem, but when I back to like I guess it's that struggle between like Western values versus Eastern values. You know, you see it on TV all the time, like parents saying "I love you" to like their kids and kids saying it back, and I used to wonder like how come we don't say that shit,
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I realize it's nothing against anyone. It's just culturally that's just not how we are, and we do it by like offering you food or like
it's done in different ways.
Yeah, it's done through just mainly the actions and how you treat people.
Would you say that's what you enjoy about being Chinese American? Like forming different ways of expressing love and gratitude?
Yeah, I've come to really appreciate that. I enjoy it,
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean.
I thought you were going to say something.
I was letting him finish.
Oh, I'm done.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think a part of me too that I really enjoy about like being Filipino American is that our resiliency, because I feel like that's a very common attitude that we have as Filipinos. Like no matter how bad the weather is, and it's always bad in the Philippines because it's always raining, there's always happy smiles. Like that's always how our people are always described. They're just very happy-go-lucky. Like, and it made me really appreciate that because like I go through a lot of like a lot of lows. So me thinking about like what my people have been through and they're still fine and could still like be happy, it helps me. It helps me kind of like summon that power and be like, I'll also be okay.
Yeah, that's true. Wow, that's cool. That's what you think of, like culturally?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, like we're very resilient.
Oh, 100%. I was watching Cosmos. Have you guys ever seen it? It's on Disney.
Yes.
This is the one with Neil.
Yeah. Have you seen it?
Yeah.
You seen it?
Yes.
Did you see the episode where he was talking about Voyagers?
Maybe not.
Maybe not. Because he was talking about like the potential of like going, and building humanity outer space and being like an intergalactic type of race where we exist beyond just Earth.
Yeah.
And there are people who it's hard to comprehend that idea of like what does that even mean? Like how is that even going to be possible, right? Because yeah, like what the heck? That's so new, that's so different. And then he made a comparison and he's like, of course we can do that because we've already done it before. Yes. And when he said that, I was like, what do you mean? We've gone and built like a different, gone and found a different planet already in the past or what? But he was talking about the original Voyagers, and I'm going to butcher all of the information because I forgot all of it, but he was talking about how this tribe of people that lived, I don't even remember where in Asia, the resources in that land, it was getting eaten up. Like they were having good times and they were like, kind of, what's the word I'm looking for? just like running the resources down, basically.
Yeah.
And so when that happens, they're concerned for like the future. Like, what about the future generations? Like the fish that we eat, they're dying out. Like, what are we gonna do? And so a group of people in that tribe decided to voyage out into the open sea.
Yeah.
And this is like, this is way, way before Jesus' time.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
What was the name of the tribe?
I don't remember, but they were like, we're just gonna have to venture out into the open sea, and that's so scary because you don't know what's out there. Just imagine coming from that tribe, and they learned how to navigate just by the stars, and they use like the knowledge of animals to understand like the ocean, because animals have an idea of like how things should be, like when the weather changes, like they're just more in tuned into that stuff. So they studied the animals and how they were, and then they eventually, of course, some of the people died out during that path, sailing out into the open sea. But the first island they touched down was the Philippines. And from the Philippines, they decided to keep going, and that's how the Pacific Islands, Hawaii and Samoa, and like all of the Pacific Islands and everything like that. And so and then I started thinking of like Moana.
I was gonna say that's literally Moana,
the original voyagers. And I just
did they have boats back then, or was
they built it?
Were they on like a raft?
Canoes.
It was like a raft, like Moana. Like if you saw Moana, like that basic raft, it's like that.
Wow,
yeah,
that's amazing.
Yeah, and I think like that. I am a descendant of that, and to voyage out into the unknown, like that is what I'm proud of, or that I take pride in. I thought that was really cool,
right?
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah.
Yep. We've been talking for a long time.
Yeah.
It's been like 10 hours now. Any closing thoughts? Anything you guys want to add about anything that you thought of in terms of like the questions that were asked earlier? Like anything you want to re-answer, or like just get out there, put out there into the world?
No, but I feel like you guys definitely made me think more about like what it means specifically to be Chinese American. Because I guess typically I would think about it as like a monolith, like Asian Americans, but not so much specifically about what it like for instance, like what it means to be Chinese American, what I'm proud about.
Yeah,
that's interesting.
It's a very loaded question. You know, with like a very convoluted answer. I feel like that I'm not completely sure about yet. So.
I think Filipinos are so prideful. It's like almost as if like, of course I think about that. I don't know, right?
Yeah, I think he kind of has like the opposite of problem, whereas like we didn't know what it meant to be Asian American, whereas for him he never even thought about like just being Chinese American, because he is
Asian American.
Yes. Like he is the face you think of, maybe.
When you think of Asian American, you think of this.
I always do, Jackie. It's the same thing as he said. Like Americans, people most likely will think of a white person. Asian American, most likely people might think Chinese because they're the biggest country.
Biggest like Asian American subgroup here.
Presence in America.
Yeah,
for sure.
I'm not sure if that's why I feel that way, but maybe that's part of the reason why. But I guess now that I'm thinking about like reasons that I'm proud to be Chinese American, like you said, it's resiliency. I see it in my mom a lot. She's gotten into like a lot of different types of businesses, and she's never given up. She's failed countless times, but like she has that like heart to want to keep going because she wants to make it.
Love that about her.
You know what? Absolutely. I'm actually surprised, like, you didn't say this, but just, of course, your mom is a gleaming example of it, but entrepreneurship. Just the ability to enterprise.
Yes.
Chinese Americans have done a tremendous job in doing so because, I mean, of course, they didn't really have the option, right? Because a lot of the reasons why Chinese Americans built their own businesses is because when they came here, nobody wanted to hire them.
We were excluded from
Exactly.
But
what an amazing, just answer for that. Okay, you're not going to hire me? I'm going to start my own stuff.
Yeah.
Like, wow.
Yes.
That's such a fearful thing to do.
It's just not something I think about a lot, So
you take it for granted.
Yeah, sort of. I mean that's pretty much what I have to say.
Maybe it's because it's not something that's talked about to be prideful in.
Ooh.
Whereas I feel like I'm in some spaces, like online and stuff, where we do talk about what is Filipino pride about? Like, what do we have to be prideful in? Because I'm in those spaces, I think about these things.
Yeah.
But it's like, how often do you find yourself in that type of...
No, I mean, I don't really have any space for that type of discussion. Usually it's between me and Renz, like we'll talk about things here and there relating to culture. But like my friends don't really discuss these kind of topics. So I'm sure that's part of it.
Yeah.
Interesting. Okay, cool. I realized one of my earrings fell off, so this whole podcast, I've just been rocking one earring. I was debating on whether or not I should say it, but I might as well say it. Yeah. So, anyways, that was a pretty loaded episode. We appreciate
but I do want to say, like,
one
thing, though. Oh, no, I'm sorry. I know you're closing out, but this is just something I wanted to say because I do want to own my own imperfections. So the last cultural episode that we had, I used words that I shouldn't have. And I think it was because it was so normalized for me to hear those and to be described as such that when I said it to describe myself, I didn't see it as wrong. But at the end of the day, it is wrong. I should have known better. So that's just a little thing that I just wanted to side note on.
You didn't mention what you said.
Because I don't want to say it anymore. I debated about it, but I think that would just put me in the hot spot again, or like I'll think about it again and be like, is it right to say it now? I don't know. So I just want to say I'm sorry.
Okay. Yeah. I'm not going to push it any further.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for owning that and making your apologies. If you were offended by something that was said,
I was offended.
Let's talk about it, though. For real. Send us an email to perfectpodcast@gmail.com if you feel like you deserve an apology. I will gladly have the conversation with you. No problem whatsoever. Everybody makes mistakes. Everybody says things that they regret. So, it's just human nature. But thank you, Jackie, for coming on and sharing your perspective. We appreciate
anytime. Actually, this is the only time. I'm just kidding.
It's like, don't ask me anymore, please.
We're going to bring him back for a totally different type of episode. But again, we're going to have guests every 4 episodes or so, maybe sooner. Who knows? Stay tuned for next Tuesday. I didn't say this in the beginning. Why did you tell me? Follow us on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, Two Perfect Podcasts. We're on every podcast streaming platform. We release our episodes every Tuesday. And that's pretty much it, guys. Thank you so much for tuning in. We'll catch you next time. Take care. Love yourself. Bye.
Bye. It's been fun.